And the award for most improved shoe line from last year to this year would be the Adidas Son of Chai 3. Definitely it is still a niche type shoe, but for what it is great. Like I said, not for everybody. Definitely some very unique use cases for these, but way improved over the 2s. That is for darn sure. I was not a huge fan of the 2s. Just the break-in profile, pretty much everything about them, a little bit more clunky of a shoe. The 3s, way improved. Took all the things that were good about the 2s, really added to them in this line. So let's get right into them. Now, by far, the most improved part from the Son of Chai 2 to the 3 is the uppers. I actually thought they were molded when I first took them out of the box. They were like a full bed of a molded upper. They're not. Super tight woven upper, but really kind of dense woven upper too, right? A bunch of layers of them. You can see under the microscope, every which way, multi-directional weaving in there, just really super strong. Even the tongue really strong. However, because it is so dense and it almost creates these panels, it creates a lot of containment in the shoe just because it's that micro weaving in kind of almost like a paneled type setup. Like I said, when I put them on, they felt like it was just a molded upper, which is pretty cool. However, if you look at the breathability test on these things, they only heated up 123.8 degrees, cooled down to 64.3. I thought these were going to heat up close to 200 degrees. However, once I got them out on court, and once again, it was blistering hot out, my feet really weren't that hot at all. They felt fine, and that's a real testament to just the engineering of the threads of this shoe. Now, the one thing I will say is the lace line of these does look like a pretty traditional kind of Adidas lace line. However, there is no runner's knot option in these. Now, there's also not a ton of molding in the heel counter. Now, Adidas is known for putting really strategic padding in their heel counters. I absolutely love their ankle collars and heel counters. This one doesn't really have it. However, the lockdown on them still was pretty good. If you do want to make a runner's knot in these, you will have to put one in. One thing I did also notice about the uppers here is it does have a molded external heel counter. It goes all the way around from the lateral forefoot all the way into kind of like the middle of the arch here on the medial side. So you are getting a lot of containment in the heel counter as well as laterally just from that molding around it. And because it's a little bit lower in the shoe, the center of gravity is a little bit lower as well, keeps you a little bit more balanced on these, which you do need, which we'll get to in the playability section. Now, if you look at the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the burr, it does start to make the uppers look a little bit bizarre, but it does not get through the threads of the uppers. So I'd say even to pretty aggressive dragging and sliding, if you are on a super gritty outdoor court, yeah, you're gonna start to catch those threads. On indoor courts, rubberized carpet, they really should be just fine. But what was by far the craziest part of the Son of Chai 3 was the midsole teardown and how thick of a shank Adidas put in this. It took me forever to tear through these on the members only video, which is now, like I said, members only section now, it's just 99 cents for all tiers. So if you do want to see these videos early and the extended cut teardown with all my commentary, it's just 99 cents. You can go down in the description below. However, I was telling the members and they were just watching me. It took so long for me to get through this shank. I finally just ripped it, which you'll see in a second in the video, but I was finally able to get through it. This is just a super strong setup, especially because this is bounce foam throughout the midsole. It's just one giant bed of bounce foam. However, the durability of this midsole is going to be so darn good because that shank is going to be able to take so much force in the arch. So especially if you are throwing an orthotic in these, you're going to shield it even more. But in terms of midsole durability for an EVA-based foam, this is probably as good as it's going to get. However, if you look at the bounce height test, that kind of tells a little bit of a different story. Because if you look at this setup on the bounce height test, only 33 centimeters in the heel and then 32 centimeters in the forefoot, which is, kind of standard bounce foam territory. It's just that really does tell the story of these. These aren't the greatest things for launching up into the air. You would think they would be with how thick the shank is. However, because it is just basically in the arch, it isn't too long, you're not getting a ton of lift. And as well as the shape of the Son of Chai 3 is almost kind of circular in the forefoot as well as the heel. So it's not as streamlined getting up off the ground, right? When you're bounding down the court, taking that last step, these are more of like a balance ball type shape versus a real streamlined shape you can kind of push off on that big toe joint and lift real easy. So these are definitely not a jumper shoe, but they are a shoe for somebody with very like quick, nimble footwork and to work in certain types of situations. Like I said, we'll talk about in the playability, but just because they're not a real rocket ship doesn't mean they don't have, let's say, a lot of capabilities in and around the rim. But getting into what is by far my favorite part of the Sunshine 3 is the outsole tread. Now, it is just one giant wave pattern that goes all the way from the distal tip of the forefoot to the midfoot. Then you have a linear pattern here in the rear foot for just a little bit easier transition step, which it definitely needs. However, here with the Adidas, the 3 stripes, you actually get them in a horizontal fashion. So there still is some, offset tread. There still is some multi-directional pattern going on there. However, what I noticed is the tread depth on these goes all the way down to 5 millimeters in certain parts, which is tremendous, especially for gripping on indoor, outdoor, rubberized carpet courts. These will really grip anything just because there's such a different degree of depth. I know when I had these on indoor courts, when I first put them on, they were pretty grippy. About 5 minutes later, they were really grippy, but they also maintained a really nice flexibility to them because those break points were really at strategic areas. So they were able to transition step for more off-axis movement really well. So the grip, not just side to side or up and down, but definitely off-axis. Really tremendous, especially on that indoor hardwood. But if you look at these on the speed ratio, a little bit of a different story. They come in at a 2.06, which obviously is not the fastest thing out there. I'm surprised they even got into the 2s. These are not fast shoes whatsoever. Getting from coast to coast is a little bit more difficult in these because, like I said, of the shape of them. However, for what they're meant for, they're still pretty good. And on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper, not even a millimeter of damage. And I did this on one of the more narrow tread lines on the back here. So like I said, in terms of durability, midsole plus outsole plus upper, this is just one of the better built shoes I've seen this year. And so with these better built shoes, remember, they're gonna break in better, right? So whereas the Sunshine 2 just wouldn't break in basically, even after, God, I think I had those 3-4 weeks, they wouldn't break in. The 2s broke in over a day. So you can just tell when something is really well built, the break-in profile is just fantastic and it maintains that profile over the lifetime of the shoe. All right, but talking about the fit of the 3s, you really have to look no further than the shape of the outsoles. Once again, these circular, kind of more bulbous shapes, the forefoot and rear foot. So I mean, a narrow foot, I think go down a half size. If you're a medium foot and you don't have super long toes, I think you can go down a half size. If you have a little bit of a longer forefoot, I think just go true to size. 2E, true to size is fine. A 4E, you can go up a half size. You have longer toes. If you have shorter toes, I think you can just go true to size as a 4E. That's kind of how wide they are. And unlike the 2s, the upper is a little more buttery, so they are gonna break in a little bit better. I'd say for any lumps and bumps and bruises, snake bites on your foot, like I said, bounce foam is okay. I think for heel pain and orthotics going to do really well in these. The shank in these is going to hold the arch of these up really well. So you like arch strain, arch pain, tendinitis, any type of strain injury, these are going to be fantastic for, especially because they will hoist that orthotic on the shoe really well. But all the foot pain, these have a pretty thick slab of bounce foam in the forefoot, and they are wide enough to accommodate most things. So I would say with an orthotic, these really jump up into the more elite territory, especially for someone who's a little bit more of a lateral ankle sprainer, because even though they are pretty rolled rubber on the inside, they still have a pretty broad flange on the lateral side. So for a shoe that has really easy off-axis footwork, it still does have a lot of lateral stability. So if you're somebody that is a lateral ankle sprainer, it's looking for a little bit of pep in your step in terms of quick, shifty movements, these actually might not be a bad pickup. All right, so let's talk playability of the Sunshine 3. I'm actually really glad it's like 97 degrees air temperature and probably well over 120 on court, because it really did give me a little bit of an insight into what these shoes are good at and really what they're not so good at. The extreme temperatures really brings that out of the shoe. Now, number one, these feel like a maximalist shoe that play like a more minimalist, shifty shoe. On the sides of the midsole here, even though you do get a pretty broad lateral flange, it is kind of like a quasi-rolled rubber. So you are getting really easy transition step from side to side. I felt myself being able to very easily move side to side and just kind of get out of my own way when I wasn't moving front to back. Now that is a big difference from the 2s, which were the biggest clunkers out there. What I noticed is that, number one, because the traction is so good that you can make very easy and quick side-to-side jab steps and cuts very easily. But the bad part is getting up and down the court is not so easy. I mean, bounce foam is really nice. Obviously, I mean, bounce one of my favorites. It's just that the shape of the shoe, the way they're designed, it's not a very easy front to back, north to south, coast to coast shoe. And it being so hot in the court, you know, just kind of almost pulling me in like quicksand, it really kind of accentuates that, because other shoes I played in this year, like the Sabrinas, like the Zoom Freaks, even the newer ones, the Lucas, I really wasn't having much trouble getting up and down the court, even when the air temperature was super high, court temperature was high. These, I could really feel that hot court temperature. I think if you got a really forgiving indoor court, you're not gonna really notice it. It's just when you get to the more extremes of the conditions. But I will say, I think, you know, these do make a decent outdoor shoe with their profile and fit and everything, especially if you're like playing half court. I think these are one of the better shoes out there right now. But to me, honestly, it's just the improvements from the 2 to the 3 were so drastic that really I didn't really put the 2 in really many categories, the Ultimate Basketball Shoe Guide the last time around, whereas the 3 I could see being in a lot of them. And I just want to make mention of one more thing. I know I was like getting delirious on court. Once I came back in, I collect my thoughts a little bit better. To me, the shape of the heel and the forefoot is the best for off-axis balance on these. So if you are trying to make really nimble cuts, not necessarily hard cuts, which these will make, but those really nimble, fluid type movements, almost like the MB line from Puma, right, that the Mellows do. These do the same, but they feel lower to the ground. They feel a little bit more centered and a little bit more balanced. So I would say for that kind of more floating footwork, and if you're trying to get your body contorted around the hoop or just kind of get out of someone's way or get out of your own way, I think that's where these shine the most. So, you know, obviously I would love to hear your thoughts about the Son of Chai 3, especially because I know, I mean, I was a little bit critical of the 2s, so I'd love to know if you got the 2s, if you're going with the 3s, if you didn't give the 2s a chance or you giving the 3s a chance, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see another really agile, low to the ground, ultra performing shoe go under the knife, the Nike Sabrina 1, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam, especially enormous shanks. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.